Hello all, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and I'm here with our fan favorite, the one and only Suzanne Strausser, VP of Consulting and Development here at Core Business Solutions. Glad you could join us again.
So glad to be back in the studio.
I'm sure you are. It's great. It's wonderful to have you.
Yep.
Well, as we approach the end of 2023, we'll be looking at the upcoming new year with eyes on marketing, reviewing, and overall business needs. Today, we're going to look at different aspects of your business that you should be reviewing for your QMS or really any ISO standard. But in case you've been living under a rock, why don't we learn a little more about Suze and her journey before we begin?
Wait. I think this episode should really be titled, Suzanne Asks a Lot of Rhetorical Questions.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
but they're still important rhetorical questions, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's great. So Suze, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. I've been at Core since 2003, a long time, and have seen a ton of different ways to implement ISO and to how to manage your quality systems and your other management systems. And, it's a fun time.
It is a fun time. So you know what you're supposed to review.
I hope so.
Let's hope so, yeah. So 2023 is nearing its end, and we should probably do some reviewing before 2024 is upon us. Let's start with quality objectives and targets.
Okay. So I think every business should really do a retrospective in looking at how you ended the objectives you were measuring. So
Okay.
Certainly. And where you didn't achieve your targets, what prevented you from doing so? Do you need a corrective action in place, or was this something totally out of your control? Or did you meet things?
Right.
That's fine too. But beyond that, I really think it's time for you to have a more in-depth conversation about the measures themselves.
So taking a look at what you're actually measuring,
Yep.
not just their results.
Are they really the right measures? Did they drive improvement over the year, or were they a check-the-box exercise?
Which is very common have happen.
Yep. And we're doing that ourselves right now for our 2024 planning. There are certain measures that really don't reflect areas where we need improvement. And so we're going to be updating our own set of measures.
Okay.
I think sometimes businesses feel like their quality objectives are set in stone, which they're not. They can be changed anytime. But at year end, as you head into a new year, it's really an ideal time to review and to update.
That's a really good point. There's sometimes you just really want to change your objectives and your targets. Because if you've been doing this a while, you're going to have, hopefully, improvement in the areas you've been focusing on. Maybe it's time to start looking at something else and get those improved as well. Are you looking at the right things? Are you focused on the right things? Maybe a fresh look is what you need. So let's move on to process performance and conformance.
Okay, so the question about process performance is really in asking whether your processes have performed the way you wanted throughout the year.
Okay.
So do you have the results, again, to meet your goals?
Mm-hmm.
And have your initiatives been tied to the right factors?
Okay.
And I think about, employees, individuals as well. Are their goals designed to drive improvement in the right areas, or at least sustain the levels that you need?
Mm-hmm.
This area really becomes the heart of planning for next year.
Okay.
Most companies will consider assumptions. We're going to talk about risk here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And determine their sales goals for the next year. And, let's be honest, most companies, it's about the sales goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, how can we make more money, or at least not go down?
But from there, other department goals and department budgets, have to be derived.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a focus on improvement initiatives for the next year are planned and resourced. And it's also where you need to get, the bigger management team involved,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, if you have one, or other staff members to help develop your plans. It shouldn't be done in a vacuum, for sure.
That's true.
Senior management is rarely as smart as we give ourselves credit for. There's a lot of factors in an organization that are only known to the folks who actually do the work.
Yeah, so get them involved.
Yes.
I mean, it's really time to engage more with those workers as well. Maybe get them in that process planning to get down to the nuts and bolts, as it were, to drive some process improvements. Talked about that all this year where, getting that engagement with your employees. And when you're looking at process performance, that's really one of those places
Absolutely.
they're doing the processes daily. maybe have some creative ideas of how to make them better.
Yeah, and you really have to listen. I had an improvement idea come from somebody this week, which gives me a little heartburn to think about. But honestly, it's a great idea, and so I'm gonna see it through, and it's gonna be more efficient for the company. I know that for sure. But I gotta put my own thoughts aside and listen to them. So
yeah, that makes sense. All right, so you mentioned it. What about risks?
yes, risks are a part of the planning process. Conditions change from year to year, and obviously they're tied to opportunities and assumptions that you make as you kind of magically forecast for the next year, which is always a trick.
I see SpongeBob with the magic and the rainbow. Yeah.
Yeah. And we, core, we always write down our risks to keep them visible. We put them in a presentation that we share with folks.
Yep.
And if you're using our improvement plan document, dear listener, it helps if you take a look at that with fresh eyes. Maybe even completing a new one.
Okay.
But regardless, you need to be honest as a team about your strengths and weaknesses and what impact how they may impact you during the coming year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, involve as many folks as is practical. And then, we get input and then review these in our all hands meeting at the beginning of the year.
It's a crazy time. I mean, I know that we've talked here at Core a bit about AI.
Yep.
Manufacturing, they've dealt with automation in the past. So that was almost like their AI.
Yep.
Now we're getting into places where, employees are a little fearful. Is AI going to take our job? But just with risks, there's opportunities as well. And looking into things like AI, can that make us more efficient?
Right.
That's a way to look at it. But as far as looking at risk, maybe you're looking at a new market, product upgrades, maybe even stretch yourself in a new product line, and those risks aren't just risk. Clearly, the standard shows you their opportunities as well.
Absolutely.
And how you're going to take them.
Yep.
All right. Now, everybody's favorite thing to talk about, documentation and records.
Yay.
Woo.
Well, for documentation and records, the exercise here is really to see if there are documents and records that can be archived, first of all, as you come to the end of the year. You can possibly move a year's worth of records to the archive or delete some if it's appropriate. But also then take a look at how well your systems have worked. Have there been any issues related to folks not using the current version of a document, or did they not have access to something? Have your documents expired too frequently?
Revisions, yeah.
Yep. And maybe there are some other processes you can put in place in the following year to mitigate these things.
Okay.
So it's an area where I do see most issues, honestly, especially if you have a manual document control system.
Yeah, I could see that.
If you use our system, Core, for document control, I would say check in with our support team too and set up some training as a refresher or to learn some new features or settings. Don't forget to enter a corrective action if there's a problem you're trying to address, truly.
The main thing is, I can see where archiving, like you said, they're gone. You don't have to worry about them being in the machine.
Yeah, but they're still accessible.
Yeah, they're accessible, but they're not going to be accessible to where it might be that wrong revision or the process has changed and people are using the wrong set of instructions.
Just some housekeeping that you should do every year.
Also with speaking, you mentioned Core. We have released 2 seasons, if you will, of Coreside Chat this year.
Yes.
And they're for any of our customers. Suze, Anne, and Nadine go through how to use Core in detail and many of the Core functions and all of the options. So again, if you're not using Core as a Core Business Solutions customer, that might be a way to really try to wrangle in your documentation as the beginning of the new year comes around. If you watch those Coreside Chats in the resource library, that gives you some help with how to maybe handle some of those things.
Yep.
All right. We're on the last thing to talk about, internal audits and management review.
My favorite thing.
Yes, because you love auditing.
I do. So for internal audits and management review, I think there are a few things to consider in the new year. Of course, your schedule of meetings and schedule for the audit. You should determine that in management review, likely. But also think about whether your previous schedule was effective.
Okay.
Maybe you need more meetings, maybe you need less. We've said before, Management review could be tied to existing meetings.
Right.
Maybe your president hasn't shown up for some of them, but he's in the other meetings. Well,
Right.
wrangle them in there. And are the right people there? Maybe the purchasing manager needs to be in your meetings. Maybe roles have changed. And similar for audits, can we spread them out throughout the year? Do we have the right auditors? Do we have enough trained auditors? Did they complete their audits on time? Maybe you need to outsource. You need to call us and let us take care of the audit program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. Well, no, we do have a great auditing team. And
Yes.
people have found that that's helpful to have an outside look.
Absolutely.
Do you find that spreading them out over the year is better? I mean, are you looking at specific areas instead of that? Okay, we're going to have a surveillance audit coming up, or maybe a new recertification. Let's jam all these things in we need to.
I know when I was the sole person responsible for auditing, it was easier for me to spread them out throughout the year.
Okay.
Maybe 1 or 2 per quarter or whatever. And that way they weren't all jammed in right before the surveillance when you're kind of struggling to get everything else ready. So yeah, it's something to look at for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about auditing, we have covered both internal and external ones just recently in our podcast. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So check those out. Yeah. Well, this is all really great, Suze. Do you have any closing thoughts on reviewing before we hit the new year?
Yeah. And I made a joke at the beginning, about asking a lot of rhetorical questions, but really for each element of your management system, you should be asking a lot of questions at year's end. It's how you improve, how you achieve the business results you want. Forget ISO.
Right.
We tell our customers that a lot.
That's right. We do.
These processes should really help improve your businesses. And if they're not doing that, then change things up.
Yeah.
There are a million ways you can maintain ISO compliance, but there are likely limited ways that it makes sense for your business to operate.
That's right.
So don't let ISO compliance drive your business.
When we have meetings talking about our new podcast, we meet with a lot of the people that are involved in a lot of our consulting. And it's like, just forget ISO. Let's talk about how this helps people's business.
Right.
And if something's not working or it needs to be tweaked, it's your business.
Right.
Do it.
Yep. And, feel free to reach out to us if you want some advice.
Truly. Absolutely. You don't
have to be a customer of ours. Just call us up.
No.
Don't be afraid to make changes. If you have the elements in place that we've mentioned, quality objectives, key processes, document and record control.
Everybody's favorite.
Identification of risks, management review, audits. If you have all that in place, then the very worst thing that could happen is an auditor has a different interpretation about something. You might get a finding if you change something. You're not going to fail. You're not going to get your certificate pulled.
Right.
But if you have confidence in the changes that you make, you're likely going to get a strength written up and not a finding.
That's great.
But, even if you do, so what? We learned from those too.
Exactly.
It's not going to kill you.
No, it's not. And in those audits, they give you places for improvement.
But truly, just do what's best for your business. That's my point. Yeah.
Really great advice, Suze. Always a pleasure for you to be here with us and never a dull moment. And we really do appreciate your insight.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Great to have you. And we want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope it's been informative for you and your business. If you're looking for more information about Core Business Solutions on how we can help you with ISO certification or cybersecurity or even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, be sure to do so. That way, you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.